Hello, and welcome back to another episode of General Conference Conversations, the podcast where we have conversations about General Conference. I'm your host, Caitlin, and I'm very excited to be here with you guys today, discussing Elder Pieper's talk, Trust in the Lord. And as always, I encourage you to read this talk or watch it or listen to it before you come and listen to me talk about it so you can get your own sort of inspirations and promptings and find things that stick out to you, and I get to tell you what stuck out to me. I really enjoy Elder Pieper's talks. He's a very powerful speaker, and he's a very confident speaker, and just very not that the other general authorities aren't confident, right, but he has a very kind of an oomph to his teachings. He visited our mission when I was a missionary for a conference and taught us a lot of different things, and one of them was how to work with members, which I absolutely adored, and a training that kind of stuck with me through the rest of my mission. And he was very powerful and confident then as well. He would just kind of pull quotes and things kind of out of his back pocket, just be able to rattle off scripture like nobody's business. And anyway, it was really interesting, and it was really fun to it's always fun to watch general authorities who came to my mission. I had a couple of Elder Suarez came, not to the mission, he came for a YSA conference, and then Elder Ballard came for a mission conference, but we see them every conference, right? But it's kind of cool to see the general authorities, the 70s, they came and spoke, to see them in general conference and be like, hey, I know that guy. So anyway, as his talk title suggests, is all about trusting in the Lord. And he starts by talking about the trust exercise, right, where you stand in front of somebody and then on cue you lean back and trust the other person will catch you. And he talks about how trust is the foundation of all relationships. And it's actually really interesting to think about it this way, right? Because I think trust is kind of thrown around when we're talking about faith and our relationship with God, right? But we don't often kind of hone in on it the way that he does in this talk. We definitely, and he quotes the scripture, trust in the Lord. Man, now I can't find it. Trust in the Lord and lean not unto thine understanding, right? Trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not unto thine understanding. So we quote that scripture all the time, and it's definitely part of our teachings and part of our belief system, obviously, but it's interesting to isolate it and just talk about trust, because it's something that's a little bit less abstract and a little bit less indefinable. When I'm talking about faith, faith is 90% of the time, in my experience, used in a religious context. Usually when I'm talking about the same concept as faith, in a secular context, I don't use the word faith. I use the word I'm confident that, or I trust that, right? And so the connotation of those words is not as inherently religious as faith is. Not that faith can only be religious, whatever, right? Or that trust can only be non-religious. But when I'm thinking about trust, I usually think about it in terms of not the gospel. It's usually the connotation of, my everyday relationships. And so I always love being reminded and kind of taking that step back to think of my relationship with God as just like any other relationship, that I have to cultivate and that I have to work on. And that's something that has always been really helpful to me when I'm thinking about my relationship with God, is like, well, it's just like your relationship with your earthly father or your earthly mother, right? And the same thing with like Christ. My relationship with Christ is just like my relationship, not just like, but is similar to my relationship with my earthly brothers and sisters. And I remember teaching a primary class about this very thing, and it was because like we had just started the New Testament in Come Follow Me, and part of the introduction of the Come Follow Me manual was talking about that, right? It's like, how do you get to know someone, or how do you form a relationship with someone, how do you make friends with someone, is you get to know them. You learn about their life, and you learn about their likes and their dislikes and how they talk to people. And that's when we read the New Testament, that's what we're doing, right? We're learning about Christ's life, his likes and his dislikes, and how he talks to people, and what went on in his life, and who he is, and how he, like, his characteristics and his personality. And I remember talking to the kids about that, the primary kids about that. I was like, how do you form a friendship, right? And so this is just another way to think about that in relationship with God and with Jesus Christ, the trust that goes into that, into those relationships. And early on, Elder Pieper says, the relationship God seeks with each spirit child is one so close and personal that he will be able to share all he has and all he is. That kind of deep, enduring relationship can develop only when built upon perfect, total trust. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, right? Like, right before this, he quotes the scripture of Jesus praying that, that we may all be one, as thou, Father, art in me and I in thee, they may be also one in us. And I think about that with my relationships, right? With my husband, with my friends, with my siblings. When you get so close to someone, and we joke about it all the time, right? Like, oh, we're basically the same person, right? Or at this point, we're just one being. Because like we, you either spend all your time together, or you are able to kind of, someone so deeply that you can finish their sentences, or know what they're thinking about, or know exactly, the inside joke that's going on. And you don't literally become the same person, obviously, but you get so close to that, right? And you get so close. And so I love that like God is seeking that relationship, a relationship so close that he can share all that he has and all that he is. And in return, we get to do the same thing, right? We get to say, this is everything that I have. This is all that I am. And I want to share every little bit with you. And that's what's been so beautiful about relationships where I have that total trust. I didn't have that for a really long time. It's really hard for me to make friends, or at least make like lasting friendships and deep connections with people. And it really wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't until my mission, because I definitely had those kind of deep relationships, but it really hit me as a missionary that my companions, right? I'm with them 24/7. And I met my best friend, and I met my husband on my mission. And it was really those like few relationships where we hit it off really quickly. That had never really happened to me before, and very few occasions that I'm that comfortable with someone, that we kind of click instantly, and I'm telling them all of my like deepest, darkest secrets, right? But that's always such a beautiful experience to have, right? Of to like be really close to someone, and close enough that, and trusting enough that, hey, I want to share all of my everything with you, right? Whether that be your spouse or a best friend or your mom or whatever, right? I'm so trusting in our relationship that, you love me no matter what, that I'm going to share all my baggage with you, all the good, all the bad, all the ugly, right? And I know that you're going to take it and you're going to love me and you're going to help me. And so to think of that in relationship and in context of our relationship with God, I think is a really beautiful thought. And Elder Pieper is very adamant. He's like, he has absolute trust in us. He has absolute trust in our divine potential. He has given us a plan that is underlaid with trust. Underlaid? I don't know if that's a word. But has trust built into it, right? He trusted us enough to send us here and to give us a body and to let us make our own decisions and to grow and make mistakes and learn from them. And to give us a way to then come back because he wants us close again. And so that was really beautiful. And then he talks about kind of how to learn how to trust God. And I had to kind of reread this sentence a couple times as I was rereading this, because I was like, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. But he says, sometimes the best way to learn to trust God is simply by trusting him. Like the crazy trust exercise, sometimes we just need to be willing to fall backward and let it catch us. Our mortal life is a test. Challenges that stretch us beyond our own capacity come frequently. When our own knowledge and understanding are inadequate, we naturally look for resources to help us. In an information-saturated world, there is no shortage of sources promoting their solutions to our challenges. However, the simple, time-tested counsel in Proverbs provides the best advice. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. We show our trust in God by turning to him first when confronted with life's challenges. And like I said, that first sentence, right? The best way to learn to trust God is simply by trusting him. And that can be really hard, right? That first step of trusting, the first step of having faith, right? You have to choose to have faith. You have to have the desire first and foremost. There's kind of it's like the first step to starting is having the motivation to actually start, right? That sometimes you get motivation by actually starting. I do that all the time. Like, man, I really do not want to do the dishes, right? But then I started doing the dishes and just starting it, just doing it for 5 minutes. But I'm like, oh, this takes no time at all. I'm just gonna get it done. And it's just like the cycle that we were talking about last episode about the doctrine of Christ, right? It builds and builds and builds. That as we put our trust in God and say, okay, I really don't know about this, but I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust that this is happening for a reason, and I'm going to look for your hand in this. And then God proves over and over again that he loves us and that he trusts us in return, that then our trust grows. It's just like with relationships, just like with friendships and with spouses, right? We slowly, bit by bit, kind of reveal ourselves and share personal details or emotions or be vulnerable around people, and we start to see how they react to that vulnerability. And if they react well, right, then that trust will grow. We trust them to then make more decisions like that, and to reveal more, and to come to them when we're struggling. And it's the same thing in our relationship with God. And he talks about a time when he had just finished law school, and he and his family moved to the eastern United States, very far away from their immediate family. And at first it was really well. It went really well. It was really good. But then they downsized at the law firm he was working at, and they had just had a daughter who had some significant health challenges, and then on top of that he was called to serve in a calling that was like a very significant time commitment calling. And he said it was really overwhelmed, and he was like, why, right? If like why did we take make this decision? We thought it was good at the time. We trusted the Lord. Things are supposed to work out, and I'm falling and no one's catching me. And his answer basically was, don't ask why, ask what I want you to learn. And he was like, I was even more confused. But in doing that, he did trust God. He trusted that this is what was supposed to happen, that this is where they were supposed to be, and everything ended up working out in the next couple of weeks, next few weeks. Everything unfolded, and their family is blessed. I don't think we always see such drastic answers to prayers or drastic whys, right? Or unfolding of plans so quickly. There's still a lot of trust that goes into that, especially, right? When it's maybe years instead of weeks that you're waiting for the why of this prompting, or the why of this thing happening in your life. But that is kind of my question, is how can you put your trust in God right now? Or how are you putting your trust in God right now, right? Maybe you're in like the middle of the thick of something. You're like, hey, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I trust you, right? Like, what is happening in your life that are you struggling with that you can just hand it over to Christ? And I say that with like I know it's not easy, with a personal testimony that it is not easy, and it can feel really intangible and like abstract again, right? Of like, hey, I'm giving it over to God, but like nothing's really happening. I'm not physically giving it over to God. He's not here to take the brunt of this challenge for me. And I really can't tell you how to do that. That's a very personal way that you've gotta give it all over to Jesus, right? But how can you, or how are you putting your trust in God right now in your life, with struggles that you're having? It at the very least can be very comforting to know that you can, and that he wants you to. He wants you to rant and complain and rave to him about all the terrible things going on in your life, right? He wants that, because he wants that relationship with you. So that is all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening and or watching this episode. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What stuck out to you, stories, anything like that. You can comment down below, or over on Instagram or Facebook. You can message me. And then my email is always in the description box of every video. So if you'd like to reach out to me personally, privately, absolutely do that as well. And I will text you next time.